Hey everyone, I'm Joe McNamee, expert real estate investor, author of Timeless Real Estate Investing, the upcoming book Sucks to Success, founder of Absolute Investment Training Company, and a retired Army officer. Today, we're going to be answering questions that you've asked. So this is my beautiful wife, Victoria. Say hey, Victoria. Hi. She does a lot of our acquisition on our properties, and she's also the office manager, so she's got several hats to wear. She doesn't wear any hats at all, but she has several hats to wear. Anyway, if you would, start reading questions.
Okay. Some of the questions are, the first question is from John from New Jersey. E-books or blog talk radio?
Okay, all right, e-books or blog talk? I'm not really sure there's a question there, but I'm going to make an assumption, John. You're asking a question about marketing. Should you market or create an e-book, or should you go on blog talk radio? That's my guess. Now, if I'm not hitting the mark with your question there, just ask it again, but give us a little bit more detail when you're asking the question. So the answer is, any way and every way that you can market starting a business, you should do it, especially if it doesn't cost anything. Try not to spend anything up front in your marketing expenses to get your business up and running. Build your business around cash flow. So if you're wanting to gain exposure, making an ebook or doing blog talk radio interviews is a great way to get started. Now, of course, the interviews don't cost anything. Doing a book costs a little bit, but if you're careful, you don't have to spend hardly any money at all on that. My first book, it took me 2 weeks to write it and get it published. So there's really, really fast ways of doing that. What's the next one?
This is from Ernie in New Jersey also. The best approach to a huge buyer's list.
Oh, Ernie wants to know how to build a big buyer's list. All right, Ernie. The first thing that you got to understand is all the techniques that I teach, everything that I do is based on what's happening in the economy that day, that week, that month. So it's an ever-changing process of building a buyer's list and keeping it growing. So for example, my buyer's list is in an area that the population is about 40,000. We're real close to Savannah, but we actually don't do hardly any deals. Every once in a while we'll do one in Savannah, but we do it on the outskirts, on the outline. So on my buyer's list, I maintain somewhere between 4,000 and 6,000 buyers on my buyer's list. It grows by about 12% per month, and it attrits by about 8% per month. So what I'm trying to get you to realize is, to keep that buyer's list growing and keep it solid, you have to do multiple different things based on what's working at the time that you're doing this. So as you do different things to build that buyer's list, it's going to work really well for a while, and then it's going to go stale. Doesn't mean it won't work again, that technique, but you got to constantly be changing techniques, constantly switching up what you're doing so that people just don't, it's kind of like a sign that's put on a road. When the sign's there for a couple of days, people notice it. If it's been there for 5 months, they don't see it anymore. The message is not playing and put in their face anymore. So you've got to constantly change it up. So one of the techniques that I always recommend to people is tell everyone what it is that you're doing. Tell everyone. I don't care who it is. If it's a person who has 50 cents to their name and they are living in a shelter, let them know. You don't know who they know. So you want everyone to spread the word about what you can do for people. And if you can make yourself a hero in your local community by doing things that makes that community a better place, then others will promote your business for you without you even knowing who they are. It happens to us every day. Constantly people are coming in or calling us or emailing us because someone else recommended them. We don't know who the person is that recommended them. They just heard about us through someone else. So constantly putting that word out is the best way to get started. Now, we have products that help people grow a large buyer's list. I have a product called the Massive Buyer Generating System. I'm not trying to sell you that product here, but it's over 100 techniques. 75% of those don't cost a dime to do to build a massive buyer list. It's called the Massive Buyer Generating System. So when I speak about changing up techniques, that's what I'm referring to. Multiple different ways of building a buyer's list, and you switch them up. A technique in your town might work really great, whereas it doesn't work at all 2 states away from you. And then 6 months from now, that one technique that worked great for you may not work for you anymore, and it does 2 states away. So, and you never know. It's constantly letting the market speak to you, telling you. Okay?
Okay. The next question is from Rodrigo in North Carolina. I'm relatively new, less than 1 year experienced. I have struggled because I am in a small market, Asheville, North Carolina, to make things happen. I'm concentrating on wholesaling. I've gotten 1 deal closed, but it's been difficult to get any properties under contract. Any suggestions on how to work in a smaller market?
Okay, well, you just heard me say earlier that I'm working in a population that's 40,000 people. I'm not sure what Asheville is, but I'm guessing it's probably in that vicinity. Not positive of that. But when you're in a smaller market, and I'm not talking about a population of 1,000 people now, I'm talking about a little bigger than that, but when you're in a smaller market, you can be the king. You can be the only game in town, the go-to person, if you just make sure everybody knows what it is that you're doing. Don't be shy about it. And when you talk to people and you make mistakes trying to explain to them what your business is and what you do, work on it, improve it. Ask people what they think about what you just said and get their feedback, and then adjust your pitch, your 20-second, 30-second pitch to fit what most people were saying, like as address the conversation that's going on in their mind before you even talk to them. Shorten that up and get that really solid talking to them. Now, getting started, did it say something about wholesaling?
He's concentrating on wholesaling.
Okay. One of the mistakes I'm not saying you're doing anything wrong, but one of the mistakes people make is going after a specific type of real estate deal. Now, some people will say, well, you got to become an expert in a niche. What I want you to be is an expert in being a transaction master. If you pay attention to the name that I gave this group, it's about being a transaction master. I want at the basic level for my students, for people that communicate with me, connect with me, to be able to do a deal no matter what's thrown at them. So if you're only doing wholesale, or you're only doing lease purchase, or if you're only doing subject twos, if you're only doing seller financing, you're leaving a lot of money on the table, and you're eliminating the possibility of you being able to do a tremendous number of deals and being the problem solver. So basically what I'm really saying to you is, I want you to learn how to be a problem solver. Staying in this group, paying attention to what I say, letting it, filter through what I'm talking about, let it go into you and what you're seeing happening. You'll be able to work the Asheville, North Carolina area and do really well if you just focus on this. You've got to be a transaction master at the very basic level. So I'm not trying to teach you how to, or get you to do really elaborate, complicated deals. My brand new students just getting started focus on the deal comes in or the problem comes in, how can I solve it and make money off it while I'm solving it and make everyone happy at the same time. That's what I'm teaching people how to do at the basic level.
Okay.
Next one?
Yep. This is from Roz in California.
Okay.
I'd like to learn how to be able to buy and sell homes for little dollars. What are they tax liens?
Oh, you're referring to when I say I purchase properties for less than $11. Okay. They're not tax liens. Tax liens cost a whole lot more money than that. I've never seen a tax lien less than a few $100s. So none of these are tax liens. They're properties that people need help with. They might be overfinanced, they might be over-leveraged, they could be free and clear. Typically the properties, they've been trying to sell them for a period of time, either themselves or through a realtor, and no buyer can come along and buy them. No bank can write the check at the time that they're trying to sell for the amount they're trying to sell it for. So when we get involved, we acquire the property. We may not be transferring a deed, and then again we could. But we acquire the property so that we can make money off of it while we're solving the seller's problem and solving the end buyer's problem, whether it's the first end buyer or the 15th end buyer in the same property. So we're constantly looking at how we can solve the problem, take the burden off the seller's back, stay in the deal if it cash flows. So that question is a great question, but it takes my students at the very beginning level to learn in 3 days, all day long, just focusing on that point right there. How do I pick up properties for less than $11 each? Very, very simple, but it takes me 3 days to get people to understand that. And that's in my Jumpstart Your Business Bootcamp.
Okay. Next question is from Patty in Pennsylvania.
Hey, Patty.
What do you tell your buyer, seller about the assignment fees? They probably won't understand it since it's not conventional.
Well, yeah, I mean, Patty, you're probably right. An assignment fee is not typical real estate jargon in the conventional wisdom world. So a lot of times my seller doesn't even know or care that there's an assignment fee that I'm getting. But many times I'll bring in, and they're on my videos. I think, Patty, you already have my live negotiation videos. If you'll look in those videos, you'll find where there were properties that I couldn't cash flow on. So you know I don't want to stay in that game if I can't cash flow on the property. So I might bring in my seller and my buyer and myself at the same time. All three of us are sitting right there. I think there's probably at least a half dozen or so of those videos on there where I'm bringing everyone in, making everyone aware of this. This property cannot afford me to stay in it. So in other words, there's no cash flow for me. But Mr. Seller, I still want to solve your problem. Mr. End Buyer, you love the property and you can only afford what the property costs the seller. So let me bring everybody together, bring everything above board. We're totally honest. We're not trying to pull any punches or do anything, shady or anything like that, and explain to everyone what we're doing. Now, the end buyer is not coming into that meeting until the end buyer has put some skin in the game for it to be worth it for me to sit down and explain this whole thing out. So the end buyer is paying the down payment up front. We consider them a serious end buyer, and we can't make the deal work where we receive cash flow. So now I'm going to go in this meeting, this three-way meeting, and I'm going to explain that whole thing. I'm going to try to get the seller more money than what they were going to get on the property, and I'm going to get the buyer to not have to pay as much as they were going to have to pay for the grand total of it. So it makes both sides happy. The seller's getting a little bit more, the buyer's paying a little less, and I'm stepping away with just the assignment fee. So that's part of it. Now the other part is you can have them go to closing, and if they need that assignment fee to be on the HUD-1, on the settlement, then draw up the description of what's going on there with the contract, send it to the attorney for the attorney to draw the whole thing up. But don't make it harder than it is. It's not like you have to, try to beg the seller to understand that this is okay. The seller's got a problem that no one else can solve in this economy. Okay.
The next question is also from Patty. What do you do if your end buyer wants to bring a traditional mortgage to the table? How do you step through closing a deal with banks and conventional means of closing?
Okay, so Patty, I guess you're asking me if I have an end buyer that's communicating with me on this property and they want to bring in, maybe they can qualify for a loan and that property will appraise for enough to cash out the first, to whoever wants money on the property. I shouldn't say the first lien holder. But if an end buyer wants to bring in a lender into this and actually just cash this whole thing out in the beginning, I don't have a problem with it. I don't have the right to stop that from happening. The answer is, as long as the end buyer is bringing in enough money from that lender to cover what the first lien holder has on there, or if it's free and clear and the seller wants X number of dollars, as long as it can cover what everyone wants there, the attorney's going to draw up the entire document and follow the instructions that the lender is given him or her when they're doing that closing. And by the way, if it's a title company, it's the same thing. The title company's going to do the same thing. Now, things that you can do to kind of help that still close. Let's say, for example, the house is, the seller wants $150,000 and the appraisal comes back at $140,000. Well, there's a decision to be made by the end buyer. Let's also say that the lender will only give 80 or 90% of that. So let's just say 80% of that. So there's a little bit of money that's got to come out of the buyer's pocket to cover the difference there. Or there could be that the seller agrees to just take it back a second after the original closing. The seller can take back a second. Some lenders will not allow that to happen in the same closing, but it can happen later. Now there's a risk there. Will the buyer sign the paper later? And of course, there's ways of having the attorney set that up. Those are things that I teach in my mentoring. But there's that. Or you can, the seller could have a promissory note between the seller and the buyer and not place it as a lien against the property. Now there's a whole bunch of different things that I just said there. Everything needs to be according to the investor-friendly attorney that's handling that, making sure that everything is done proper and legal for the state that that's being done in. But I'm never trying to stop an end buyer from coming in with an actual, real, true, honest-to-God lender who will provide the mortgage on buying that property. It may not be enough to cover the, what's owed on it. So that's where the creative side of it comes in, where paper can be put against that to cover the rest of it. If the seller's willing to do it, if the end buyer's willing to do it, then of course, as long as the math is right, you should be willing to do it. Okay?
And this question is from John from California.
Mm-hmm.
I'm concerned about the longevity of this kind of training, meaning will it last when times are good? Probably a silly, common asked question of people who are new to the way you do business, but anyhow, figured I'd ask.
Huh. All right, John. At first I'm like, what the heck? And then all of a sudden it makes a lot of sense what you're asking. That's a great question. The things that I'm doing right this minute, are the things that work in this economy. And I teach what works in this economy. When my boot camp starts, whatever I'm teaching at that moment is what's working in my business, my real estate buying and selling business. I'm not teaching people theory or, hey, here's this great idea that I just came up with or something like that. I'm teaching you what works in my business the day the training starts. As time changes and as new techniques start working, or they're not new, like for example, the things that I'm doing today were the same things I did in the late 70s and early 80s when interest rates were 12 to 15%. No one could afford the monthly payment, but banks could write checks easily. So my training is always adjusting to what works. Whenever I've discovered something new or something that I need to bring back from way back once upon a time into my real estate investing world, whatever's working in my real estate buying and selling business, that's what I teach in my Jumpstart Your Business Bootcamp. So what I'm getting people to understand about the things that I do are not typical things that you see out there throughout the real estate investing world. But when others teach any type of training, they'll kind of specialize in a niche or in an area. And they'll stay focused on that. Could be for 5, 7. I've seen some guys teaching stuff that's, worked 15 years ago and hasn't worked in 5 years, but they're still teaching. And it's things that are worth learning, but you're going to learn it, and then you're going to put it on a shelf, and eventually it's going to come back. For example, some of the stuff I'm doing today. I mean, I can remember sitting at my grandparents' dinner table with friends of theirs. That their name was Eva and Frank, the friends, and they were buying with private money row homes in Philadelphia, and they were selling them all with seller financing. That's what worked best in that economy. So everything that I teach adjusts to what's working. So I'm not a guy that just teaches information marketing or an information marketer that teaches real estate investing. I'm a real estate investor every day, every week, and what makes me money in real estate investing is what I'm teaching people. So it's not like, oh, I'm going to put everything on hold that's working for me and making money for me, and then I'm going to teach you something that doesn't work right now, but it might in the future. No, that's not me. So the longevity of my training is it's always adjusting to, if you get stuck and you get doing one thing and get used to it, you're making a big mistake. You have to this is an ever-changing, picture picture the money that you're making off of your real estate deals and the problems that you're solving for people as a target. That target is not stationary. It's always moving. You still want to help people and you still want to make a profit, so you have to be flexible and move with the economy and with the times. It will never stay exactly the same. It always changes. Okay?
Well, that's it for now.
Okay, well, I get kind of long-winded on my answers, but I want to make sure that I get enough information out there to where it truly helps. So I'm Joe McNamee.
I'm Victoria.
And I appreciate you tuning in. Oh, okay, one more thing. I noticed a few comments going across the feed in the group. So I'm gonna address things. I won't say anyone's names, but I've noticed a few things that people said that I'd like to make some statements about it. So one was a person was asking if these are tax liens, and then another person responded back saying that you really can't make any money off tax liens because they cost a whole lot more, because there's still the mortgage that it's subject to whatever the mortgage is on the property. So one of the things I want to make people aware of is when you purchase a tax deed, you're paying the back taxes on the property, and you have a redemption period to deal with. The redemption period is different in each state. They all have their own little rules. So when the person who owns the property, still owns the deed, who's behind on their taxes, when someone goes in and pays those back taxes, they're sitting there in a holding pattern, waiting for that seller or that property owner to either pay the back taxes plus whatever the percentage is that investor is owed. Like in my state, it's 20%. So if there was $5,000 in back taxes owed, then there would be a $6,000 bill that has to be paid. $5,000 for the back taxes and $1,000 to the investor who paid that. Now that's in the redemption period. The redemption period goes along for, in Georgia, for 1 year. Then it changes. After 1 year, now if a person is still in the redemption period, but now if the original owner wants to get the property back, they've got to pay the back taxes plus 40%. So now they would owe more money. All right. So now, after that period of time goes by, then it goes up for sheriff sale. So now in the sheriff sale process, now everyone's served. There's warnings have sent out. You're going to lose this property. If there's any lenders involved, they're also notified to the entire time. And so everyone gets a chance to go and get this property. Once the end of the redemption period hits, everyone's been notified, to include the lenders that are on that property. If they do nothing, then it's time for the attorney to get involved, the investor's attorney, who is going to petition to quiet the title. In other words, they're going to do their whole process all over again to let everyone know who has a lien or a stake in that property that, hey, this property is about to belong to this new investor, and you have liens against this. If you'd like to, you can jump in on this property. So if they don't, then all those liens are wiped off that property, and that investor now owns that property for what they paid back when they first put the money into the tax deed, to purchase the tax deed. Now, the thing that I don't like about that is that property's got to sit in my state for about 1.5 years. There's some states that's a year. There's some states that are a lot longer. I can't stand having a property sitting there that I can't make money off of. So I don't want to put any time and effort into a property that's got to sit there that long. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just I hate. Technically, by law, you're not even allowed to set foot on that property until you truly own it, and until the title has been petitioned to be quieted. You don't own that property. You don't have any rights on it. You can't rent it out. You can't do anything with it. If there's water shooting out the roof, you're not even allowed to go and turn the water off. So that's the only thing that I don't like about tax liens. But it's a great place to put some private funds, and if people can sit there and wait on it. Okay. Next thing I saw was a person out there trying to sell property and stating the price. I'm just going to say to you, the worst thing in the world you can do, if you want to sell a property fast, don't tell people how much you want for it. I know that it's contrary to popular belief and conventional wisdom, but never state your price. You want people calling your operation, getting a warm, fuzzy, comfortable feeling with you and your staff, the people that are working with you. You want to make sure that everyone knows what your system is. So remember back in the beginning I said to someone else, tell everyone what you're doing. The one in North Carolina. Who was that? Rodrigo in North Carolina. So I'm telling you to tell everyone what you do. Well, if you state prices out there on property, and Rodrigo, this was not you, but then all their questions are answered. They can't call you and find out more about your business. Every chance you have with everyone who's interested in anything at all about your business, that you need to tell them. You need to be spreading that word like crazy so that you're constantly having people from that growth calling back and building rapport with them. So if you just answer all the questions in your ad, why would they need to call you? Well, there might be something that you can do that's creative. For example, you might say, hey, I'll take $80,000 for this property. And you say that in your ad, and they don't call you. But what if they had $50,000 to put down, and then you could take back financing on the other 30? You said you wanted $80,000. In most people's mind, they're thinking, okay, well, I got to give them $80,000 or it's not a deal. Well, if they had 50, would you take the 50 and then take back paper for the 30? So don't answer everything. Make it possible for them to call so that they know a little bit more about your flexibility, your creativity, and what you can do. Okay.
I have something to say to that.
Mm-hmm.
And if you get them to call you, that's also building your buyer's list.
That's right, because they're calling and now you have their contact information. The person who put that ad out there, and I don't want to pick, I'm not picking on you. I know what you're doing and I understand it. But the best thing is, you put that ad out, 75 people may have read it, and 2 may have called you. Well, there's 73 people that you don't have on your buyer's list right now that saw it and might be interested in it, but didn't like the price or didn't want to ask more questions. Get them to call you, contact you, and then answer them. You know, Victoria's right. I mean, it's all about building the buyer's list. The buyer's list is the most important asset that you can have in your business of real estate investing. Okay, thank you now.